Hello everyone, this is Ryan from Heavyocity. We've got a brand new instrument out, and I'm very excited to be able to show it to you today. It is NOVO Pack 1 Intimate Textures. Intimate Textures operates in the same engine as NOVO Modern Strings, the huge orchestral string library we put out earlier this year, but it provides a completely different and unique set of string samples. And just to be clear, you don't need to own NOVO in order to use Intimate Textures. So if you're not familiar with NOVO, real quick, the idea behind it is that it's not your average string library. Sure, it offers everything you'd expect from a full-fledged orchestral string library, as far as multiple dynamics sampled, multiple mic positions, round-robin sampling, legato control, all that. But it gives you so much more in terms of unique experimental sounds and different ways to combine the organic and synthetic material creatively. So continuing down that path, we went back into the studio after NOVO to record even more unique and really interesting sounding detailed strings. And the result is in front of you today. It is Intimate Textures. It is a huge collection of over 40 different articulations, includes 3 different mic positions, round-robin sampling, as well as dynamic control of every sample. The content is laid out in 2 different engines. There's a 4-channel instrument for the traditional string sound, so to speak, with separate level and panning control of your close room and hall mics, as well as the full mix. You have envelope shaping, EQ and filter per channel and per articulation, a space unit with a bunch of great convolution reverbs for that added depth that a lot of people desire from their strings. And then there's the Texture Designer, which is a 3-channel instrument in which you can load up any of the instruments, articulations, mic positions to any of the channels, tune them, pan them, set the levels all separately, map them to the keyboard as you see fit, combine them with all kinds of per channel and master effects, as well as rhythmic effects, including the cycle engine, which you can use to do all kinds of crazy rhythmic stuff, arpeggiators, granular synthesis even, and we'll get into some of that later. So we've had a lot of fun using this instrument so far. It combines really well with the sound of NOVO, or it stands alone as a powerhouse library in and of itself. In true Heavyocity fashion, it's the kind of special sauce library that can really put a composition over the edge to give it that really detailed, professional quality string sound. So I put together a little demo real quick here, just to show you guys what the library can do. I'm using Digital Performer 9 and Vienna Ensemble Pro 6, and I will play that for you now. Okay. So the percussion you heard in there, just to get it out of the way early, is from master sessions. And I'll just solo that real quick so we can take a look at what's going on there, and then we'll get to the intimate textures, good stuff. So that ticky stuff, the higher ticky stuff, sort of, is coming from the ensemble metals loops, and there's a modulating filter cutoff on that. And then this low bass drum loop is from the ensemble woods. And with that, I'm just doing some gentle fader riding to give it some dynamic movement. And then later on comes in this big verbed out trash can sound, also from metals. Stack some more loops on there, and then add in the snare heavy that snare heavy kit from the first Master Sessions product, Ensemble Drums. So that's what's going on with the drums. Now let's take a look at, let's start with the organic string sounds, and we'll just go back up to the top. There's a bunch of different stuff going on here. Let's take a listen. All right, I'll just stop right there. There's so much going on, so why don't we just break it down by instrument. Let's start with the cellos. The first appearance of a cello is using the butterfly articulation. And I'll just play a few of those for you, because that's actually one of my favorite articulations that we recorded. So for a lot of these effects, they sort of phase in and out as you sustain the loop. So what that is there's an ensemble of players sustaining just a basic note, and then the effect sort of cascades through the section. Each player, one at a time, fades in and out of doing whatever the prescribed articulation is. So in this case, what the butterfly is a very, very light, very, very rapid tremolo of sorts, but it's very scratchy and very effectual. And so when you layer that on top of the other players sustaining, and then it moves subtly around the stereo field, it's a really, really cool effect. And what I did here is just combine it with some delay. So that's what you hear going on there. And then it key switches to a vibrato pulse for that low note. And then the upper cello comes in on a scrape. Which is also a very cool sound. I'm just going to solo that real quick. What the scrape is the players are moving the bow slowly from sul ponticello to sul tasto and back. And it sort of creates this evolving texture. Glassy at times, scratchy at times. And of course I added some delay just because I love to add delay onto these effects to sort of give them an echoing effect throughout the stereo field. And what I'm also doing on this, which I'm sure you can hear, is some pitch bend. That blue data there is just a little bit of pitch bend going up in the beginning phrase there. The other data you see is programmed mod wheel data, which controls the dynamics control on the interface. And then as it swells back up, you bend down, and you combine that with the octave doubling in the other cello part, as well as the violins, which I'll bring in later, and it sort of gives this really eerie effect. And that low vibrato pulse, the effect there is of players moving in and out of very heavy, rapid vibrato, and then easing out of that into a basic sustain and repeating that. Let's take a look at the violas now. The first appearance of a viola, I believe, is on a tremolo. I'm sorry, it's a butterfly. And then the first viola comes in on a straight up tremolo. And that's a sul ponticello tremolo, so it's very nasal and scratchy. And then it segues into the droplets effect, which is another very cool effect. What that is again, it's the cascading effect of each individual player doing the effect one at a time. The droplets is them bouncing the bows against the string. So they're all sustaining, and then one player here or there will just start bouncing the bow against the string, and it creates this kind of creepy sound. Let me just pull that up for you. Throw some delay on there. And of course, as you can see, there's lots of, I'm doing lots of modulation automation here. So the mod wheel by default is assigned to control the dynamics wheel. And there's a lot of that to bring the effects sort of in and out of the ensemble. There's also some panning automation and some pitch automation, as I showed you as well. The violins are doing something a little bit more subdued. What they have going on here is a scrape, I believe, up top. In sort of the mid-range of the violin. And then that upper sound you hear is actually an octave doubling that octave pulse. The effect here is of each player randomly jumping the octave from the written note to one octave up and back. And I added some delay, of course, to give it a sort of a more spaced out subdue vibe, and some verb on it as well. So that's what's going on there. Let me just play that for you one more time so you get the full picture of what's going on. viola butterfly. And then all the strings settle in on a nice sultasto. Or rather, the violins are still doing the octaves and the scrapes. But the lower strings switch to sultasto here. And just the one nuanced rhythmic section there is the violas using the spiccato, the sul ponicello spiccato, combined with the grace notes, also known as Vivaldi trills. That's another really cool effect. Let's see, that's the viola. So we have those multi-sampled up and down bow, round robin. You have all that control in the interface here, which is nice. We have it in a half-step interval, as well as a whole step interval. You want to use one or the other depending on what key you're in or the effect you're going for. And what it is just a really quick finger. You can pretty much hear what it is. It's a really quick flick of the finger by the players to give this almost imperceptibly quick trill. And it sounds great. You can key switch between the spiccato you can do all kinds of fun stuff. I just added it in here for just a little bit of rhythmic motion in the mid-range there. And then it switches over to sultasto, and the rest is history. Now let's take a look at the more hybrid or synthetic side of things. It opens up with this preset called The Glass is Greener. Just real quick, so the texture designer comes with all kinds of different snapshots, which are pre-made here at Heavyocity, all different combinations of all the sounds for different effects. There are organics that combine different instruments in a sort of predictable, organized fashion. And then these are a little more depthful and creative. There's ambient presets in rhythmic and pad and ARP form, and well as evolving ones that sort of run the gamut from subdued to loud and in your face. And a lot of those have a lot of macro control, which controls all sorts of different parameters on the interface to allow the sound to evolve. And that is also by default assigned to the mod wheel. So if you're playing this Glass is Greener preset with the mod wheel down, so it goes from subdued to kind of open and brighter. And then as you add in higher notes and lower notes, you really notice the difference. Not the most drastic difference in this case, but it helps it to give it some movement. So, excuse me. So right off the bat, you've got that Glass is Greener. It's giving us a bass note as well as an upper. And it's just the sultasto samples with some light filtering and a little bit of EQ and maybe some saturation. And then what you hear there is an alt version of the Glass is Greener preset. And what's going on there is you've got the distortion and saturation from the drive unit, giving it a sort of crunchy, mid to upper range kind of vibe. And then I'm also EQing out some of the low mids and completely filtering out with a high pass filter below a certain point, just so it doesn't interfere with the other bass that's going on. And then you heard some of this big wide strings as well. I know I'm very creative with my track naming here. There's big and wide strings going on here. And that is the preset Sordino Affairs, which has this effect going on up top of octave pulsing. And as you bring the mod wheel up, that upper pulsing kind of comes out and then sort of fades away into a more verbed out, subdued low end. And I'm sure you also heard some of the rhythmic stuff going on. The first rhythmic of the Texture Designer presets to come in is this staccato preset that I just sort of threw together real quickly on my own. It's not a snapshot from the library. What I did is I loaded the cello spiccatos onto channel 1 and the viola samples onto channel 2 in a sort of conventional instrument fashion, starting at the bottom of the viola range, C2 there for those viola samples. And what's going on here is the cycle engine is triggering that sample repeatedly. I set it to a rate of 16th notes and then programmed in some velocity to give it that on and off sort of movement. And it's kind of an alternating velocity pattern between the viola and cello. There's also some panning movement going on in the viola. And then that evolution you hear is just a modulating filter. It's a low-pass filter being driven up by the macro controller, as well as some saturation. The next rhythmic preset to come in is indeed a preset from the library. It is called Tasto Tubes. It's in the ambient arpeggiated section. So this is also using the cycle engine, obviously. That's sul tasto sustain on channel 1, and then 2 and 3 are bouncing around. Some panning movement, start time manipulation, and there's some complex macro control going on here too, in the panning, in the saturation, as well as in the filter. And there's this secondary rhythmic thing going on here. This is a preset called Wind Cycling. All right, so let me just play all of the designers for you real quick, and we'll take you through one more time what's going on. So the staccatos come in, distorted strings. Big wide ones too. So the front half of the composition sort of showcases the organic strings, while the back half really features those designers. And then this last segment here kind of gives us a little bit of both. So all those swells are just the mod wheel controlling the dynamics wheel. The violins are still doing the scrapes and the octave pulses. The low cello and viola sounds are on sultasto. Also using that delicate arco preset as sort of an extra layer of strings. I'll just solo that real quick. It's actually a variant of the delicate arco preset, and I assigned the macro as it increases to sort of verb out the sound. So that's that kind of fade out that you heard. And then what's going on here is an alt version of Tasto tubes. So Tasto tubes was the rhythmic arpeggiated preset that you heard earlier. This is an alt version of that that is super verbed out and gives you sort of a more pad-like sound, but there's still some sort of faintly perceptible cycle stuff going on in there. So that is giving you the sort of verbed out synthy sound. And that just about covers everything. Let me unsolo all these channels and I will play it for you one more time. Show you how it all comes together. And that's it. Thank you for watching. NOVO Pack 1 Intimate Textures is now available directly from Heavyocity.com. We hope you enjoy.